So one of the core concepts that we've been looking at in 40K as a new player, and if you've been playing for a while, this is a good reminder, regardless of army, regardless of mission, regardless of the codex that you're playing, this idea of firing into a unit until it is destroyed, getting into the mindset, and it's challenging, right? You're balancing the mission, you're trying to achieve what you're trying to do, you've got your opponent working against you, otherwise there'd be no game. This idea that you need to remove units, you need to remove models off the table and slowly dismantle your opponent's army. This leads into last week's podcast where as your opponent is pulling out their army on the table, you're looking and setting it up, getting ready for deployment, whatever. You're looking at the units they've selected and asking yourself two important questions. The first, what's the plan for the army? What are they looking to do? And I shared some ideas with my Samhan Warhost when I was building this army, the synergy between the different models and the different units. How would you deconstruct that? And this is further kind of refined by looking at the mission. Based on what you're playing, you and your opponent, what units for this mission are going to be more important, are going to be vital to winning the mission. That is your target priority. Generate the volume of dice, take it out, make it happen. Now, what happens when you don't have the volume of dice to do it? Maybe you're going up against a horde army, or maybe something is going to shift with the mission. It's putting you more on the defensive, and your opponent now is going to be able to dictate how, when, and where they engage. Sometimes you can't be everywhere at once for 40K. And there are these examples where, honestly, look, it's just a bad matchup. I mean, my Samhan Warhost is so refined with speed and jet bikes and Vipers. Occasionally, I do come up against an army where it's just going to be really hard. Here's another great example. To this day, honestly, to this day, I can't even think about how many 40K games I've played. All of them wonderful. Tyranids. I've been playing Tyranids for a long time. I'm pretty good with Tyranids, and I'm not just saying that to pump myself up. I'm pretty good. I feel like if you gave me a Tyranid army, any Tyranid army, I could look at it, I could bring it to your club, I could bring it to a tournament, and I could put up a good fight, right? I could do well with it. I have never beaten Dark Eldar with Tyranids. Never. They're always zipping around in their dumb raiders. Everything's poisoned. Everything's like super shots, tons of dice. I'm not getting any saves. I can't assault anything. It's just a bad matchup. I've never been able. Now, of course, there's this. Now I've developed like a psychological tick against it where I'm like, Dark Eldar? I can't beat Dark Eldar. I've got to somehow crack out of that. But all this because, look, occasionally you will get hit with a bad matchup. So what happens when you can't completely focus fire on every single unit? What happens when you can't remove units? There's this idea of, with the volume of dice, so you want to do something in 40K. It's a D6 based system. You roll enough dice at it, and it'll happen. It's simple in that application. I want to make your Terminators disappear, force you to make enough saves. Now, this is modified if I'm hitting you with a lower AP weapon, right? It's going to reduce your save modifier on there. If I can throw some more wounds on there, that's going to force more saves. But even if you're rolling 2-ups to save for some reason, I'm hitting you with a Grot Blaster or something like that, I throw enough dice, you're going to go poof. So the more dice we can throw, the better. As you take losses in your unit, so using this example of my Terminators, right? Let's say I have 10 Terminators. The dice output of those 10 Terminators, if I assault you, they're assault Terminators. Fritz always rolls with assault Terminators. The dice output of those 10 Terminators is at its strongest. So in my calculations of what I'm going to attack you with, I have good volume of dice. I take some wounds, I take some losses, I'm down to 8 Terminators. Still, in the assault, that's a decent amount of dice for me to generate. I get taken down to 5 Terminators, right? A little bit more shooting, whatever happens. Now, I don't have as much volume of dice if I go into assault you. So now I have to really kind of look and say, okay, do I think I can do this? Can I take you in the assault? If I can't take you, I've got to pile on some other stuff. Or maybe I have to bring up some of those Razorbacks and pump some shots and get your numbers down so it matches my volume of dice. Now you take me down to 4 Terminators, 3 Terminators. The unit is still up. It's still there for game purposes, but the volume of dice that I'm going to generate in the attack, in the assault, if it's assault terminators, since Games Workshop 40K is a D6 based system, I don't have dice volume to reliably do that. For all intents and purposes, in the assault or in shooting, the unit is out of the game. The unit is out of the game. Now, as the game moves on, if I have 3 or 4 Terminators and you have a beat up Chaos Space Marine squad of 3 Chaos Marines left, well, that's equal to equal. I do have the volume of dice to throw up against there. So in that analogy, if you can't be everywhere at once and your opponent is overwhelming you, maybe they're Horde Army, you're smaller, what you want to do is look and shoot or assault or however you're going to get your opponent to remove models down to that 50% or a little bit under 50%. Bring down the dice pool that they can generate. The unit's still going to be a threat, but it's going to leave it swinginess of the dice. It's going to give you more breathing room. So if I'm going up against 2 big groups of cultists, right? 2 massive, big groups of cultists. I can't take out both units, but if I take the first one down a little bit, I take the second one down a little bit, I've reduced your volume of dice. So this is a tactic that we can look at. It's not ideal. Look, absolutely. 99% of the time, you want to remove full units. I want to make that unit go away. I want to make that unit go away. But this is going to give you, in those circumstances where you have a challenging matchup, a little bit more resiliency. The final piece, and this is going to save you in a lot of games. You're going to thank me for this. This is big. A lot of us, myself included, full disclosure, Cornate Glory goes in there. I charge into the last. I tend to play from a very narrative perspective. With that, my Khorne Berserkers, they're always moving forward. No matter the losses, they're pushing forward. Anything they can assault, they're going to assault. I really get into my games. But tactically, that's probably not the smartest thing to do. You're better off, so let's use this analogy. Space Marines advancing. I've got a attack squad. It takes some losses. It does some damage. I'm down to 5 Marines. Okay, I was 10, right? Down to 5. I'm still in the game. Once I get down to 3 or 4 Marines in there, I'm better off pulling back because the volume of dice I'm going to generate, I have to hit, I have to wound, you've got saves, maybe you got multi-wounds on there. The volume of dice for me to continue pushing forward and you just shoot and wipe it out, I lose a unit. It would be better to pull back. And you have this, as you move through the game, you can't reform units, but let's say I have 2 tack squads that both take losses and they're both down to 4 or 5 Marines each. Move both of those squads together as you can, and while they can't form up and mob up into one unit, they can work side by side, and they can now still put out the same volume of dice as a full squad, both shooting at that same unit. So be aware that as you take losses and your units get down to 60, 50, 40, 30%, rough numbers in there, pull back, regroup. Don't just keep on sending them forward. You're going to lose them. You're going to lose the dice. Reform, get them together, get your dice pool back up to engage.